It was always a joke that the city attorney's office existed to basically just discuss why someone cannot do something. We're trying to figure out ways that it can be done all within the legal framework under Texas law. We strive to be partners, and that's what I'd like to look at our department and our approach. We're not here to say no. We're here to try to figure out how we can get work done.
Hello and welcome to The Clear Voice, brought to you by Clear Career Professionals. I'm your host, James Groom. This is a PositionCast episode for 2 assistant city attorney opportunities in Odessa, Texas. With me today is a recruiter for this search and retired city manager, Kelly Kuenstler. Kelly, welcome back to the show, and we're glad to have you.
Good morning, James. Thank you. It's great to be here. We have some guests from Odessa this morning, the city manager, Aaron Smith, and the city attorney, James Parker. So we are going to start out with just asking them some questions about Odessa and about the position, hoping that we are thorough enough to answer many of the questions that applicants may have. Why don't we start out with you guys telling us about Odessa and what makes it tick?
Well, hey, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. You know, Odessa is just a wonderful community. When you think about Odessa, think about the energy that is provided here, not only powers the region and the state, but the world. This is an amazing community. We're located in what is, I believe now, the 10th largest metropolitan statistical area in the state of Texas. Lots to do for families. In addition to that, it certainly is a tight-knit community. I think of a lot of individual ruggedness in this community. So it's a pretty special community. It's one that I've been involved with, if you will, for 20 years. This is where my wife and I were married. This is where my career started in city management, and we went a lot of other places and finally found ourselves back home. I can't think of a better place to raise a family and be a part of a community than right here in Odessa, Texas.
That speaks volumes. Thank you. What about the structure of city government in Odessa?
Sure. So the structure of the city government is obviously we're a council manager form of government, and within our charter, home rule charter, got the city council, of course, who appoints the city manager, the city attorney, the city secretary, and the municipal judges. And of course, I handle the administration side of things. And of course, Mr. Parker, he's got the city attorney side, and quite a lot of work over there as well.
Bet there is. What about your city council? How engaged are they? Political cohesion? Is there friction?
You know, I've worked with a lot of city councils over the years, and I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with this particular city council. They are engaged in the community. They allow me to do my work. James can speak to his relationship with them, but I've got a fantastic relationship with the council. You know, in the past, maybe Odessa didn't have the greatest reputation for that, but those days are long gone. And certainly we have just a positive city council who actually backs off and lets us do our job. In my opinion, they do respect the council manager form of government. So they're not into micromanaging. They're not into stepping outside their lane.
That's great to hear. And it's a real selling point for this position.
I would like to add, I would agree with Aaron. Aaron kind of summed it up very well. Our city council is very engaged, but they very much trust their staff that they have, and they really do listen. And that's a big plus. Some of us who have been involved in cities have dealt with different types of circumstances, and it definitely does make working here a little bit more enjoyable in the sense that you do have a pretty sophisticated council in the sense that they understand what their rules are, they understand the city charter, they understand ordinance, but they also understand the importance of hiring qualified staff to do the work and trust the staff to do the work. They do a very good job of sticking to that rule. So, I mean, I've worked with a lot of city councils, and I have to rate them as one of the best performing councils in the sense of understanding that council manager form of government, delegating those authorities to staff, and trusting staff to do their job.
It's so refreshing to be a part of a council that understands the policy role versus the administration role. That is such a selling point for people because there's definitely bodies out there that seem to cross those lines and don't really understand them. So, James, let's talk about the position of assistant city attorney now. What are the formal expectations and then the real world dynamics that are going to shape these two positions?
I'm going to be flexible. I was influenced and had the benefit of receiving training from a very, very experienced city attorney and municipal law attorney, and I learned a good bit from him. In terms of expectations, I think one of my primary expectations is going to be that you actually have a genuine interest in municipal law and that you want to learn municipal law. Does someone who comes here have to have a background in any specific level of experience in municipal law? No, they can receive the training here, but I would request or at least expect that they have an interest and a drive to learn it because municipal law is just like many other areas of the law; it never stops. Every other year, we have a new legislative session in Texas, and our legislature changes laws on us every odd number of year. So there's a lot of learning, and it's nonstop. So it's not a static position where you get to a particular point and you're pretty much going to be the same. The legislature changes things on us, and you really do have to keep abreast of what those changes are. And some of those changes are significant, and we don't know what they'll be. And so we're okay until 27, but in 27 we'll have a new legislative session and things will change. So there's a lot of learning involved. So that you kind of have to have that genuine interest in that you want to learn municipal law in order to succeed in this area.
How many deputy and assistant city attorneys does your budget allow for, and are they specialized?
I'm kind of doing something a little bit different. We have space for a total of two senior assistant city attorneys and two assistant city attorneys. There's flexibility in there as well to designate let's say, for example, a first assistant city attorney, in terms of just assigning more seniority and maybe management duties. I'm kind of taking a different approach, allowing someone to kind of come in and develop their own interest area. If someone comes in and they prefer working with law enforcement or fire and they prefer doing that type of work, they'll get a chance to sort of quote specialize in that work. I want to give everyone an opportunity to get a broad-based exposure to municipal law so they can kind of do a little of everything. But if they choose to, like, they tell me, says, I like doing land use and planning and zoning. That's where I really want to work on. They'll get a chance to do that. But, they're going to get broad-based exposure, but that opportunity to specialize in fields that they want to go into, that they have a genuine interest in going into. I find that works better, and you get more people who are actually more happy to do the work that they want to do versus getting locked into a position that they really don't like that kind of particular work. So we're going to be a little flexible and allow people to sort of find their niche that they prefer. And there's a lot here in this city. There's a lot of subject matter to cover, and it's going to, you may be interested in real estate, you may be interested in land use, you may be interested in zoning, you may be more interested in working with law enforcement matters and fire department and those sort of first responder type agencies. You'll get that opportunity here.
That's exciting, especially for someone, as you started out by saying, that's interested in municipal law to be able to determine where their passion might lie if they don't already know.
Exactly.
How do you think the council views the city attorney role, like as an advisor, a guardrail, problem solver, enforcer, all the above?
I think there's probably a little bit of all the above, but I think ultimately it's advisor. I think, my impression of council, they just want to be told and they just want the guidance. They just need the guidance there. And, between the city management and staff, they have a lot of substantive knowledge. A lot of a lot of our members of council understand a lot of the municipal matters as well. And then you just have this overlay of, okay, where is the law on this? And that's sort of where I come in at. So I believe they kind of look more as a guidepost, maybe as an advisor. They don't need the city attorney to make what we sometimes refer to as policy decisions. They have individuals who are trained and experienced in making those decisions. They just need the legal guidance, and that's what I see my role as.
Perfect. Do you expect proactive legal strategy or reactive issue management or both with this position?
In reality, I prefer proactive. We can observe and see where we're going. There's a lot of predicted formulas and patterns that we see in this, but in this sort of practice area when you're working with a municipality. But there's always going to be a measure of reactive. There's going to be a lot of things that do happen and that you're going to have to react to. And sometimes those things come with very little warning. Basically, a good example would just be simple questions or simple problems or issues that arise from one day to the next. Be a mixture of both, but overall, your umbrella or your overall approach is going to be one on proactivity. Just try to observe an issue spot, and you'll catch most issues, but there's always going to be some reactive because you can't predict. There's too many stakeholders and individuals that provide input into the city to be, to have 100% proactive type. Have your role limited to just proactive. There's always going to be a little bit of a reactive function there. It's a mixture of both.
What about your municipal prosecutions? What's your volume like?
We have approximately 2,200 cases. Right now, we're probably working around 2,200 cases annually, which is a pretty busy court. And we're getting some of our processes, nailed down and getting more efficient and just making improvements along the way. And so the court's come a long way, and it has done a lot. We have good judges, we have good staff. I've been prosecuting for many years, and when March of 2020 hit, which was the COVID shutdowns, that really was a serious challenge to all municipal courts across the state. And there's just been varying degrees of recovery from that. But there's been a lot of things that have come out of that. So we're probably about a 2,200 case volume. It's a consistent, busy court. We have two presiding judges that are going to in two courtrooms that are going to be hearing cases and various dockets. So the court staff and the court procedures are working exactly as the way we intend for them to work.
Is most of your litigation handled in-house, or do you rely on outside counsel primarily?
Right now, we have a lot of outside counsel. We have several outside counsel handling our outside litigation. Just right now, it's more efficient that way. We have very good, experienced local outside counsel that understand the city, and they have a really good working relationship with the city. They know people here with the city. We have a good comfort level with some of our outside counsel. Being local and they know the city, it's a serious advantage. And so I feel good about our outside counsel. They're very good folks to work with.
Any code enforcement priorities that you can discuss or think about might be of interest to a candidate?
If anyone is coming from another city and coming from prosecution and working with code enforcement, we have the same issues that almost any other city encounters. We have, it's always a struggle to make sure people keep their properties clean and get rid of junk vehicles. We have the normal situations that any city of this size would have, nothing out of the ordinary, and it's just there's always going to be a stream of code enforcement efforts just to remind residents to keep their properties free and clear of trash and weeds, and make certain that structures are kept up to date. And if you got a vehicle that's disabled, you can't leave it in your driveway. Those types of things. We were very normal. We're very typical for a city of our size. We're not really out of the ordinary for code enforcement in my experience. I've worked with a lot of cities, and I believe the city of Odessa is right in line with many other comparable sized cities when it comes to code enforcement issues and code enforcement efforts. And I believe we're facing the typical code enforcement challenges that any other comparable sized city faces.
Sounds like it, absolutely. Aaron, how many FTEs are in Odessa city government, and what's your annual operating budget?
Around 1,000 employees. And of course, the annual budget's around $340 million. So that's a big budget when you think about it. We just came out of a strategic planning session, and, one of the things that we take away very seriously from that is, this is a strategic plan that's going to budget $1 billion over the next 3 years. So it's a big budget, a lot of things going on, a big organization, as you can imagine. It's a community that we serve. The last census estimate had us at 114. It's probably closer to 130. We're a unique city, like I said, because we're so close to Midland, which is, another 130,000 people. And a really unique situation in Odessa is just to our west. There's about 50,000 residents that live in an unincorporated area of West Odessa. So our daytime population is probably 200,000. So it's a unique city, and it takes a lot of folks to provide those services.
Right. What about personnel management involved with these two assistant city attorney positions? Are they going to directly supervise anybody? How many are on the legal team?
There's that option. We do have two positions that can be filled as senior assistant city attorneys, in which case there could be some management of any junior attorneys that are hired, but also there will be some responsibility for managing, like legal assistants and some of our legal secretaries, which we have really good staff here. They're very experienced and they do a lot of work. So there's a lot of collaboration and opportunities for management. So we do have, but two of these positions can be filled as senior assistant city attorney roles, or they're at least promotable to senior assistant city attorney roles.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Do you think, James, that the city departments see the legal team there as partners or as gatekeepers?
I just had this conversation with one of our department heads yesterday, and we endeavor to be a partner. We're here to help. I mean, that's our job, is here to help. The purpose of a legal department is not to see, it's not always a gatekeeper, but invariably it does become a gatekeeper function to the extent that we are somewhat of a filter to make certain that something can proceed or that there's no legal issues. But overall, we're all one team here. We're trying to accomplish a goal. We're trying to move forward in the sense of accomplishing projects and completing projects. So there has to be a partnership here, not necessarily a gatekeeper. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish goals. So sometimes we may not be able to do something in a particular way because the law says we can't. But then we decide, what do we need to do to become compliant with the law, and what other steps can be taken to make certain that whatever project that we're pursuing, will be compliant with the law. That's our job, is to find that pathway to make certain that we can actually get projects and get objectives met, and as opposed to performing that sort of pure gatekeeper function. That's something that I've seen and I've had discussions with other lawyers in the past, and it was always a joke that the city attorney's office existed to basically just explain why someone cannot do something, and that's never a really good approach. I mean, you really don't want attorneys to be just around to say why we cannot do something or why something cannot be done. We're trying to figure out ways that it can be done, all within the legal framework under Texas law. So we stay compliant with all of the various federal and state laws that we must follow. And so, yeah, we strive to be partners, and that's what I'd like to look at our department and our approach. We're not here to say no. We're here to try to figure out how we can get work done.
Makes sense. Absolutely. How integrated is legal into policy development, procurement, risk management?
Procurement risk management, we have good personnel that, most of our department heads, they are pretty well versed in the procurement methods. We do a lot of procurement. Texas has a lot of options for procurement, and our personnel are pretty experienced in utilizing all those forms of procurement. We have some risk management that we have on staff as well, and they are all pretty well versed in what we need to be doing in terms of risk management. So we do help a lot with the procurement questions and the risk management questions. Policy development, I always like to say, legal's contribution is providing legal ramifications of particular policies. But, I'm a strong believer, it's part of the separation of powers doctrine. It's sort of a variant of the separation of powers doctrine, is that, we have city management and we have city council. That's their sole focus, is to figure out what the city's policies are and to implement those policies. And then it goes through the filter of legal review. But one of the one of the things I was trained by prior city attorneys I've worked for is that our job and role, the voters didn't put me in place. They didn't elect me. They don't want me here to make policy. They didn't ask me to come here to make policy, and neither did council. They just need legal guidance, and that's what I limit myself to. I really like to stay away from policy development because I don't see it as my role. And there's city management staff and city council persons who that's their primary role. And my job is to provide legal guidance as to what laws apply. Policy development, I like to allow that to be determined by the folks that are hired and elected to make those decisions, and I'm neither one of those. So I like to stay out of that, and that's just the way I was trained. To me, it's cleaner. It's more appropriate. So I stay out of those types of decisions, and I offer my 2 cents if anyone wants it, but I stick to the legal interpretation and providing legal guidance. I find that works out the best in my experience.
And that clean separation can make for healthy government.
It does. It's just a matter. I mean, I think if you've got legal departments that are too involved in policy, then they really can't be paying enough attention to what the law is. So the law is, in many cases, black and white. There's some gray area there, but the key here is really what I see, what my use is. Our elected city council and our city management staff, they understand what their policy directives are, and they're in a better position to understand and apply those policy directives. That's what they do. They don't need city attorney and legal input on that. They will make policy. Then we will bring in the second part of that and provide the legal guidance. When you put the two together, when they work right, they work perfectly. I think we're working very well on that here at the city of Odessa.
Sounds like some clear, healthy government to me. So, James, you talked at the onset of this podcast about one of your expectations with these applicants would be that they have a genuine interest in municipal law. What are some other basic expectations that you're going to have for the successful applicant?
I came from the private sector, and private sector, we work longer hours, and I'm okay working longer hours. I don't necessarily require, I mean, I don't necessarily have that attitude for the people who work for me. That's just my style. I want people to have their time off and get away. It would not be workaholics. Ironically, if I see someone that fills this position shooting out emails, unnecessary emails on the weekend, I'm going to say, take your time off, get away, don't get overworked. I'm used to it and I do it and that's fine. Basic expectations, I will still want them to be present and being willing to learn. So one of the first things, for example, if we do get someone that comes on board with the city, depending on their timing, is we have the annual city attorney conference that is put on by Texas City Attorneys Association. Each year we have the annual city attorney conference. It's probably the premier continuing legal education event for city attorneys. If someone does come on board by June, they're going to go to that. That's going to be in Galveston this year. That's sort of part of that commitment to sort of learning municipal law and being involved in municipal law. So basic expectations is coming in and wanting to learn. Now, if they already have some experience, that's great, but really kind of coming in and wanting to learn, but being responsive, obviously, professional. I mean, we're here to help, not to be a problem. We want to be helpful to the city. So, most of what I expect is I think if I have individuals that come into this position that have a genuine interest in learning municipal law, I think they will meet almost all the expectations I personally have. I think the rest of it can be learned on the job. No one learns this in law school. I mean, when I was in law school, there was 0 municipal law classes. I don't think that's changed. So this is one of those rare subject areas or practice areas that most people are going to develop after graduation and getting a job and working in this field. If someone wants to get into this field, this is an excellent opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. I'm assuming that these positions will not be part of the executive team. Am I correct?
Probably not. Not necessarily. I mean, there's always that opportunity. They may be required to attend meetings that I'm going to attend. Depending on the project, especially if they'll be assigned on special projects. There are certain projects that we'll have ongoing from city management staff that may require their more involvement. And so to that extent, they may be getting involved on this sort of what you can consider some type of some executive level involvement in the sense they'll be handling and being the point person for larger projects, important projects for the city. So there'll be that opportunity. It just depends on how involved they are and how much they want to be involved in some of the projects.
What does Odessa's charter say about the powers of the city attorney?
Powers of the city attorney are, obviously, is the city's chief legal advisor. The city attorney is appointed to oversee the legal department. And, there's some certain provisions under our charter and ordinance that requires contracts to be prepared by the city attorney's office and ordinances and resolutions. It's very predictable requirements in the sense that you have a city attorney who's expected to be the chief legal advisor, expected to have this department, expected to supervise and oversee prosecutions. We have to remember prosecutions in municipal court. Our municipal court is a court of record. It is a state level court. It is a state level court on the same level as a justice of peace court. The city attorney is given the power and authority to be the prosecuting attorney for the in the municipal court, prosecuting all cases on behalf of the city, entitled to file suit and represent the city in all cases involving the city of Odessa, managing this department and managing all the personnel in this department. So it's a lot to it, and it's going to flow down into anyone who takes this role, especially if they get to a point where they become a senior or maybe a first assistant city attorney. They're going to have some of those responsibilities as well.
Makes sense. Are there any recent ordinances or controversial policy changes an applicant might want to know about?
No, I don't think there's anything that I would consider controversial. We do have some ordinance changes that I'm planning and that I'm going to start working with staff. It's typical. This is very typical in a lot of cities, but we're going to probably be doing some significant upgrades, or not upgrades, but maybe revisions to our city's ordinances, city zoning regulations and animal control regulations. And those will be pretty comprehensive and they'll have a lot of effect, but they're just going to be just some updating and making it easier for the city to perform its job to regulate these areas, regulate animal control. One of the most important jobs the city has is for the regulation of animals in the city, both to promote clean and sanitary conditions in the city, but also to protect animals, protect people's pets, protect animals in general. There's been a lot of state law changes that have been aimed at more animal protection and, increasing the protection of animals, increasing the penalties for cruelty to animals. We have some ordinances that we're going to update to get more in line with state law. Kind of like what I said earlier, the legislature will come in and they will make changes on us. So recently, the legislature has increased the penalties for cruelty to animals, and they've also adapted limitations on how an animal can be secured. So we pass a lot of those regulations down through our ordinance so we can enforce those regulations to ensure people comply with state law, and also so we have some good regulatory framework within the city to regulate animals and protect animals in the city. The same thing could be said for our zoning regulations. We have a lot of changes coming in terms of our zoning ordinance, which will be a very comprehensive change. It's very typical that a lot of cities go through this, and that's probably two of the biggest that we have coming up.
Great, thank you. So now let's get to know you guys a little bit better. Describe for me, each of you, what your management and leadership style is like.
You can go first, Aaron.
My leadership style has always just been servant leadership. I think that's the way I've always managed any organization I've been involved with. It's kind of a buzzword, if you will, but really it's a way of supporting everyone around me. My goal is to be as supportive as possible so that everybody can be successful, not just professionally, but also personally. We aim to make this the best work environment possible.
What about you, James?
I'm a firm believer, my role here is I work for the public. At the end of the day, I mean, this is about, assisting the city to be the best it can possibly be. And the only way you can do that is to have good employees that are happy and enjoy being here. My management leadership style is very similar to Aaron's in the sense that I've been in that role. I've been the assistant city attorney. I've been the associate at a law firm. I've been a staff attorney with a state agency, and I've been a business owner. And so that's kind of, I don't forget how that was, when you're working, under someone else's supervision. One thing that we won't ever do here is we have a collaborative approach. This is not an environment where you're going to be criticized, not in our office. We try to use everything as teaching moments. If you don't know something, then we'll teach you. If something's done incorrectly, well, you learn from your mistakes. I mean, you learn from your mistakes, especially in the legal field. You learn from your mistakes. You go to trial, you lose, you learn from your mistakes. Our prosecutor, he has jury week this week. One of the things he asked is, if he can dismiss a case or if he can handle a case in a particular way. And my response is, you're the prosecutor. I assigned you to be the prosecutor. That's your job. The only way you learn to be a prosecutor is learning to make those decisions. You don't need to come to me and clear. You don't need to get my approval to handle a case a particular way. You're going to have discretion to do that. That's the only way you learn how to do this job, is to be able to use your gut and to use that experience. If you dismiss a case that you think, I shouldn't have dismissed that case, no big deal. If you go to jury trial and you make a few mistakes, as you're learning, because trial practice is a constant learning process. If you get a not guilty or if you lose a trial, figure out what you did wrong, learn from it, and just continue to evolve. We don't have a system here where you're going to be punished. We don't bring you in to talk to you or hear about trying to teach and be more collaborative. At the end of the day, I kind of agree with Aaron. You're here all the time. I mean, you spend a lot of time wherever you work. When Sunday comes around, you don't want that. We don't want an environment where that depression sits in, like, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. We don't have that here, and we have it so it's an enjoyable place to be, and everyone likes being around each other, and we don't have tension. We don't have the issues. We don't have personality conflicts. We get along with each other. We have a very relaxed atmosphere because we work. We got a lot of stuff that we got to deal with. And so we don't deal with a lot of strictness. We don't deal with a lot of scrutiny, and we don't deal with the criticism. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes in the jobs they do. You learn from it and you improve. And that's our approach. So that's the management style that I have here. That's the leadership style we have here. We want people to enjoy being here, not to look at this as, start of another week. I don't want to be here. We make it fun. My office door, people come into my office all the time. My staff comes in here, asks questions. There's none of that pretension like, oh, I'm only available, don't bother me. You have questions, ask. I want you to ask questions. Pepper me all day with questions. That's fine, because then you're learning, and that tells me you're interested, and that tells me you want to be here. I look at things a little bit differently. I don't look at it as being annoying. You're not going to ask me too many questions. At the end of the day, I want to teach. I want to teach and help, and that's what we do here.
Sounds like you would be an amazing resource and an amazing boss for somebody that's fresh out of law school, that's interested in, the municipal world. What a place to be. So liked your answer, James. Thank you.
Just for anybody who's looking at coming here, I was in that position when I came out of law school. I haven't forgot. So I was in Central Texas. The attorney market was tough. I still kind of remember what I was looking for when I was in that role. It took me 20 plus years to get here. I strive to be kind of what I was looking for when I was looking for my first or second job, in my early part of my career. So I kind of remember what I was looking for. So I'm like, well, let me try to strive to be that. And that's sort of what shapes my approach.
Absolutely. So, in closing, what would you all advise applicants to be prepared for, to study, to get familiar with prior to applying and interviewing for these positions?
As for me, I think be prepared to tell me why you wanna work for not so much the city of Odessa. I'm kind of from the outside looking in. I have not been here very long, so I come from Central Texas. I kind of have this outside looking in kind of viewpoint still. The city's a really good city. I've got a lot of experience with a lot of cities. It's a very well-run city. It's a very, very good place. The personnel are very good. I rate them very high, and that's not just me saying it. That was one of the factors that I took into account when I decided to come here. I closed the law office to come to the city of Odessa because I liked what I saw. You don't really have to be that familiar with it, but I do think be ready to tell me why you want to get into municipal law. What about municipal law is interesting to you? And you don't have to, there's no right or wrong answer, but I want someone to think about why municipal law and what interests them about going in and becoming part of a city's legal department. If they could answer that question, I think that's all the preparation they'll need.
Well, thank you guys for being with us. And we are going to get to work trying to recruit a couple of assistant city attorneys for the city of Odessa. If you're interested in applying, feel free to reach out to me. I can't answer your questions, I happen to know a few guys who can. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Aaron, James, and Kelly, thank you for being here and sharing your insights into these opportunities with the city of Odessa. If you're interested in one of the assistant city attorney positions, you can find out more information on our website at clearcareerpro.com under career opportunities. To our listeners, thank you for what you do day in and day out in your communities. Please like and subscribe to the Clear Voice, and we will catch you next time.